The key successes of implementing the portal were being able to, like I said, provide economic information and seeing that economic information being used. Secondly, being able to have a tool which rallies together different departments to provide their data. So something which is live and it's visual and it's able to create buy-in from a lot of different stakeholders. Another key success was getting political buy-in. Our leaders at the city are quite supportive. They have been quite supportive. Our the chairperson of the Economic Development Committee, Councillor Kaunda, has been very supportive of the economic data portal. So it's been great. It's been an achievement really to get economic buy-in, but from political stakeholders across the board. And another achievement, I think, was to create was seeing information created in such a or laid out in such an easily accessible way, a short. Summarized but yet still potent way that can be used by different stakeholders, as opposed to long documents and longer publications, which play their role, but so does short and punchy information. The challenges, firstly, it was a big challenge to get data. So we already used to collect data before in our program, but we collected on an annual basis for the purposes of releasing annual information as well as quarterly information. In this instance, we needed to access as much data as possible in time series format so that it could be usable by people even in academia and also people that are needing to conduct in-depth research. So getting data from different departments and different stakeholders was not very easy. Secondly, one of the purposes of the portal was to provide a system which would take less time for the city to collate information and make it available to the public. While that is something that we are in the process of achieving, what we've realized is that you need to be able to be prepared to put in a lot of time, more time than you would have put into whatever process that you were involved in before. So the second challenge was getting time and getting resources, more the people and the time, to successfully put the portal together on the city's part. The third challenge was the process, developing a process and a system or systematic way of working to get the information out onto the portal. So from conception to the gathering of information, cleaning of the data, then transferring that data and information into the correct back-end format or into the correct Excel format, and then sending that onto our partners at Open Cities Lab, and for our partners to then develop the back end from the technical development point of view, as well as the graphic end, sending it back to us for comments, etc., etc. That is something that has been a challenge in the sense that I don't think we foresaw how much of a thought process needs to go into it. It's been working fairly well at the moment, but it's been a process to get there, which is characteristic of the fact that it is the first time that this type of thing has been developed.
I think one of the key successes was when the portal was accepted by council. I know it took a lot of work for the Edge team to get it to that point, and I think it felt really good to know that they had the city management and councillors behind what they were doing. And after that, the head of the department made the Edge portal one of his top 10 projects that he would then report back to council on, which, it really gave the team a lot of confidence. and made them feel proud of what they were doing. Then I think another success was actually when the Edge team put new data stories, and updated the dashboards for the very first quarter. So during development, there were a lot of data stories, so backdated data stories that were worked on in batches. There were new dashboards that were being designed, and data was being put onto the portal for the very first time. And that was all really good as part of the process to get up and going. And then the launch happened. But I think a real key success was after the launch, when for the first time it became natural for the Edge team to actually put data and update data stories and dashboards instead of their regular quarterly PDF Edge publication. So it was the first time that we really saw what the rest of the future of the portal was going to be. So it was going to be quarterly that these updates were going to happen. And that was a real success when that happened for the first time. I think the biggest challenge was understanding the process that it took from content through to something going live. And I think this is particularly true of data stories. So with the actual raw data, there isn't any design that's required. So once the Edge team knew how to put data onto the portal, they were able to do that seamlessly on their own, and they've continued to do that very successfully. With dashboards, all that needs to happen is that the Edge team needs to send through the data, and then that's automatically updated. Nothing on the dashboard changes except the new data. The difficulty comes in with data stories because every data story is completely unique and has a lot of content. So it has paragraphs of text, it can have images, graphs, tables. It's always telling a different narrative. It has key questions, it has calls to action. And that's where the process from the person who's developing the content to actually going live at the end of the day is quite a tricky one. So what happens is someone writes the data story, that then goes into a Google spreadsheet, which has every section of the data story in it. Then that goes to the designer. At that point, the content needs to be 100% perfect. Then the designer does a mock-up of what that's going to look like. That goes back to the Edge team for comments. Then that goes back to the designer who updates, gets final approval from the Edge team, and then that goes on to the development. Development puts it live onto the website. And at that point, there could still be bugs, so it goes through quality assurance and some testing. Those bugs then go back to the development team, and that is the whole process of getting a single data story live. And putting the processes in place that are required to do that smoothly, for me, was the biggest challenge. So what we're finding is that there's always a lot of pressure, time pressure on the Edge team. So that means that they, at the end of every quarter, they've got to report on what they've done. So a data story has to come out quickly, or they're chasing news. So an economic recovery plan is just released, or employment statistics have just come out, and they've got to have that out within a few days. Otherwise, the economic data is not really relevant anymore. So they're pushing through content. There's not enough time to take it through internal quality assurance. So then it goes to design. And at that point, the content should be correct, but often it's easier to check or proofread once it comes back from design. And so a lot of mistakes are being picked up at that point, which causes tension between the design team and the content producers, because everyone needs to play their part at their part of the process. Then it would go back, and then again, because of time and capacity constraints, it wouldn't be checked properly, which means that by the time that it got live, there was still content and things that were wrong from the perspective of the edge team, but by that time, the developers shouldn't be fixing typos when it's already gone live. So I think making that process smooth and letting everyone know that there are very real cutoff times, and that if those mistakes slip through and that is live on the site, then that's just how it's going to be. And I think that it caused a lot of gray hairs for everyone. I also think that there were different expectations from every other actor along that chain. So I think probably unrealistic expectations on how quickly each part of that process would be. So whether it comes to commenting on designs, or how long it actually takes to do the design, or how long it takes for the developers to do the work. I think there's always an expectation that it's going to take very quickly, especially, as I mentioned, in the situation where there is a lot of pressure to get things out timelessly. And I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that time is required at every step of the way. And yeah, I think that's a challenge that we have come a long way in, but truthfully, it's still getting ironed out.